Welcome back to movementprofessional.com. So today I want to talk about the concept of movement sequencing, and we're going to do an example of a movement. We're going to kind of work up to just a high plank or the top of a push-up with Mike here. So the idea of movement sequencing is if you have a movement that's body weight in nature, and you can talk about this with weights too, but it makes more sense with body weight stuff, is there's got to be a sequence to show you what you're ready for and kind of what's too hard, so that you can, within any type of training session, you can know like what is appropriate for you and how to make it a little bit harder and how to make it a little bit easier. So that sequencing to me is very important for an assessment to see, when people are just kind of losing control and what they can, what position that they can actually train at. And then also like understanding what position's right at the end of their challenge point, where they might want to train there for a second or two, but not want to hold for a lot longer period of time. And it's not necessarily going to be a position that they can spend a lot of time in really understanding like body mechanics and position, because they're almost like surviving it, versus the easier end of the spectrum of a challenge, which they can really like work on some cues and some body awareness to get them more into their body, so that they can that could be their foundation for harder movements down the line. All right, so when we start with the high plank, what we're going to do is go to hands and knees. And the general theme is that you're looking for a position that you can control easily, that has a smaller lever arm with more pillars of support, eventually to a longer lever arm with less pillars of support or a more narrow base of support. All right, so and in this case, it's also going to be maybe a shift more into the upper body as opposed to as much weight in the lower body. All right, so for Mike here, what we want to do first is just get an understanding of this quadruped position. So if we think about the top of a push-up, we're going to want the wrists to be right under the shoulders. All right, so if he's training, put your hands out in front of you a little bit. If he's training his quadruped position out here, then he's not going to have this be a foundation that can lead to his high plank. All right, so let's put your wrists right under the shoulders. All right, and then we want to get a sense of, I want him to do this in a hollow body position. All right, and the reason that I want him to do that is because if people lose control in the top of a push-up, so go on the top of a push-up for me, just like lift your knees up, get high plank. A lot of times people will lose their control down into an extension of the back here. So this hollow work is the counterbalance for that. So you are actually working on being stronger in the plank, okay? So it seems like it's really biased in flexion, but that's really what I'm looking for him, because most people have difficulty with this. And when they lose control, go ahead and sag, they'll drop down through there. All right, so drop down to your knees. So you can see he was working pretty hard there. That's something we want to get up to, but that might be a little too hard to train, not for Mike, but for some others. So we want to figure out, each sequence or each point in the sequence. So we're going to start with this quadruped position with a hollow. So I can see that he can do that. All right, let's bring your feet together and your heels together. Okay. So when you have your heels together, that can help you turn on your glutes a little bit. Okay, so then you could press your heels together, turn your glutes on, like right where the glutes meet the inner thighs, and that will help to pull your tailbone under more. So already right here, he should be feeling like he's doing some work through his arms. All right, and one of the hardest parts about the sequencing for people is to actually have them feel a challenge in a position that's a little bit easier. So what I want is for Mike to create his own challenge in this position that's kind of easy for him by spinning the elbows down, creating this upward push, pulling the hands towards the knees and the knees towards the hand. All right, so automatically he should feel like he's already turning the abdominals on, he's creating this posterior tilt. All right, and then relax for me. You feel some work happening there? Yeah. All right, so that is an exercise in itself, because if the next step is too hard, he can always come back to that and train that. All right, so then the next thing, I want you to go back into that same position. All right, so I want you to think about, if you're going to get into this top of a push-up position, your knees are going to have to come off the ground. All right, so now I'm going to have Mike load his hands more by spinning his hands through the ground, trying to get a sense of turning the lats on by pulling his hands towards himself, but also get a little bit more abdominal activation upward. All right, so he's basically offloading his knees by using his abs and his upper body. All right, and that would be another hold, and see if how well he controls that, how hard that is, right? And come on out of that. So one of the things that we're always looking at as physical therapists is does something bring on somebody's symptom, right? So if somebody can have shoulder pain, they can have neck pain, they can have back pain, they can have wrist pain when they're doing a plank. So it's important, kind of helpful sometimes to have that symptom to backtrack from, because anytime a symptom comes on, that will just tell you that you're working too hard, right? That you're doing something that you're not quite ready for. So it's nice to have that regression back. So if we add this extra piece where Mike starts offloading his knees, and now his shoulders and neck or wrists or something that he's complaining of give him trouble, and it's not the areas that he wants to feel it, like in the bigger muscles of the triceps, the lats, the abs, something like that, then he just needs to go back and regress, all right? But if all that's good and he's feeling it where he should feel it, the next step is going to be go ahead and create that tuck again. Load your arms, load your abs the same way. Now just lift your knees and hover them. Okay, and then you hang out there and see how you do with that. So this position is going to definitely load the quads a little bit because you're driving the toes down. All right, so you're going to feel that in the front of the leg. So the quads will want to pull, go ahead and come down. They're going to want to pull a little bit on the front of the pelvis forward. So you're going to have to work a little bit harder with the abs to kind of fight against that. But the idea is just to feel like, can you offload those knees without losing this position? So you don't have to hold it that long, but that should be substantially challenging. All right, so then the next position is do the exact same thing. Go ahead and create that same sequence. All right, offload the knees, and then step one foot back, and then step the other foot back, and then just see if you can maintain the same position. Try to keep your heels together. All right, and again, nothing was lost from the position here, at least, when he went from knees bent to knees straight. So that would indicate that he's got control of this high plank. All right, and then bring one knee down, and then the other knee down, and then relax there. Okay, so that would be the full sequence there. We have quadruped, trying to create the position here where you're pulling the heels of the hands towards the knees, trying to turn that on. Then we're loading the arms more, loading the abs more to try to offload the knees. All right, and then we're fully offloading the knees by actually hovering them, and then we're stepping back into the top of the push-up for the last, go ahead and step into the top of the push-up for the last point of the movement, all without losing this spinal position or this pelvic position. All right, and then come on out of it. All right, so that's movement sequencing for the high plank. If you have any questions, you can go to movementprofessional.com. I'll see you next time.